Hello, everybody. Bert Kammerer here, and today I'm joined by my good friend and BK Hobbies team pilot, Alex Dean. What's up, Alex?
Hey Bert, good dude. What are we doing?
So what we're doing is we're teaching people how to set up HTX from the ground up in the most simple, easiest way possible. I think one of the problems that people run into is not knowing where to start, what to do, how to set up the model. There are a lot of videos everywhere, but it's about putting everything together into one, like logical steps that you
Yeah,
have to
you're
follow.
you're teaching
Get
people like me who have never done this before how to do it. So let's.
well, you're helping me teach people like us that
Oh,
didn't know what the hell we were doing, how
okay.
to.
Yeah.
So I have a brand new TX16S. It's not the Max. It's just a regular MK2. I hear it's just as good as the Max. The only difference is the gimbals. They're not CNC aluminum, but it's supposed to be a super nice radio. And I can't wait to even try this radio myself because this will be kind of my test radio that I play with and do stupid stuff with. And
I want to see you set up buddy boxing.
yeah, absolutely. So here it is.
Yeah.
We already unfortunately opened the wrapper because we had some technical difficulties. But let's open the box. So again, this is just a regular TX16S MK2. It has the internal module, so that's an important thing to talk about very briefly. Is that you do need the internal module if you want to fly. You don't need it, but it's probably the best way to go. If you want a different protocol, RF protocol down the road, then you get an external module and you plug it into the back of the radio, right? So as you can see,
Right. So if you want to run Express LRS, you need the ELRS radio, and you want that so that you have forward programming with rotor flight. Everything from everything from rotor flight software on your thing. You can also change directions of the ESC. You can change the ESC governor mode for both. I've done it for Hobbywing and YGE, and it works great with ELRS.
absolutely. So as you can see in the box, you get this nice little foam case. You get the manual. It's kind of wrinkled because I guess it wasn't probably packed very well. And then as you open this foam case, there you have it. You got this nice radio. And it looks, yeah, it's actually really, really nice. It looks like the Max, but it just doesn't have the nice, cool carbon look, and it has plastic gimbals. But I hear the gimbals are also Hall effect. One thing I'm noticing is it doesn't, the handle doesn't fold.
Oh yeah, if you get the nice one, the handle will fold down,
Yeah,
which makes it nice for
yeah,
transport.
on the Max it does fold down, which makes it nice for transport packing and everything else. And it, to be honest with you, it doesn't feel as doesn't have that heavy, nice feel to it. It feels a little lighter, but I mean for the value, I mean it's incredible, right? So
I feel like you got to mention that they don't come with a battery.
yeah, they don't come with a battery. None of them do, and we're gonna get to that real quick. But you get this foam case, you get different paddings for the back of the radio here, so you can make them. If these are too, I don't know, cumbersome for you, you can go with the lower profile ones. And then you get like a keychain, and you get screen protector, and then you get your USB cable, and then in the back you have this module bay, which is empty because it has an internal module. So you can purchase a separate module if you want to run something like Spectrum or whatever else. And then here,
Yeah, so then you can use this thing for bind and fly, Spectrum, or for Taba, or whatever you want.
yeah,
Also,
absolutely. And then as you open the battery compartment, these radios, none of these radios come with batteries. They come with these cradle, I guess you could call it, or whatever it is, where you
yeah,
can
kind of.
insert the what are they called? 18965. I forget what they're called. They're very common batteries. I know people that vape, the big clouds with the big vaping devices use those batteries. So you can even buy them at a vape shop, or you can also buy a lithium ion or a lithium polymer battery. Exactly, just like that. I have the lithium.
Oh, I didn't mean to flick you off. Here you
Yeah,
go.
I have the
Oh,
lithium ion like you do. Um, but you can also get a lithium polymer, and I think the polymer is a 6200, and the ion is a 5000. So
yeah, this one's a 5,000.
yeah. Anyway, I mean, this radio for the value, if you, these radios are so cheap, really, in the grand scheme of things, that I mean, you might as well just buy the Max, right? It would make.
You want to talk about why they're cheap? Why are they
Yeah,
cheap?
let's talk briefly about that. Anyway, the battery that you need for this cradle right here is an 18650 battery. It's a 3.7 volt battery, and I believe it's a lithium ion too. And you need two, obviously, to go in here. Or, like I said, you can buy the lithium polymer or the lithium ion batteries, 6,200 milliamps and 5,000 milliamps respectively. Why are the radios cheap? Because they don't have to do anything other than manufacture radios. They-
Right. It's you're only buying a piece of hardware. You're not paying for
You're
software development as
absolutely,
well.
and I feel like the majority of the cost that goes into what we pay for, with a transmitter like Futaba or Mikado or any of the well-known brands, is all the years and years and hours, thousands of hours of software development. These guys didn't do any of that. They just literally made the radio and loaded the software that was designed by the or written by the open source community. So hence the reason for the extremely attractive price point. All right, so as we look at the radio, I'm going to use the lithium ion battery that I had installed on my TX16S Max, and all I have to do is just plug it in like so. Perfect. Alrighty, and then we're gonna power this thing up for the first time. So obviously just hold down on the power button, and there it goes. Okay, so first thing we get here is a warning that the SP switch and the SE switches need to be moved. It pretty much out of the box, it wants all the switches to be up, and that's all it took to boot up. So first screen we get is we have Aero, meaning it's an airplane model. You've never done this before, Alex, right?
Yeah, I did. I went through it the first time. Honestly, the first time I did this, I was confused about everything. I got frustrated and quit. So I wish we had this. I wish we had
It
this
could,
to watch it.
it could be frustrating. Okay, so the main things that I want to talk about this radio. The system button on the left hand side takes you to your Lewis and your scripts, right? And we're gonna get to that later. It also takes you to a lot of different menus that we're gonna talk about very briefly here in a little bit. The MDL or model button on the right hand side, it takes you to your model menu. Now, I'm looking at the screen on this, Alex, and it's totally different than my TX16 Max. And it's probably because the firmware is different. I don't know what it is, but we'll get to that too. But the first thing that I encourage anybody to do is to first update the firmware on this, because HTX is open source software, and you want to make sure that you have the latest and greatest version, just because it just simply makes sense, because you don't know when this radio was manufactured. This software is changing weekly. I
A
mean
lot.
monthly.
Yeah.
Yeah, insane. So you want to kind of at least start with the latest piece of software. So we're going to talk about updating the firmware, and then I'm going to show you how to create your first model. But to update the firmware the easiest way possible, what you have to do is you go to a website. It's buddy.htx.org. Okay, so once you get there to buddy.htx.org, on the left hand side, you're going to see the different versions of firmware that exist at this point in time. To check the firmware on your radio, you go to the sys button, sorry, and then you click on the very, very last
I.
icon that has the I, and then you'll see this thing is running HTX version 2.7.1.
That's
If
a
you
pretty
look
old
at the
one.
computer, yeah, they're on Centurion version 2.10.5. It's crazy. So what we're gonna do here is this is actually pretty easy to do. We're going to turn the transmitter off, and then we're gonna plug in the USB cord to the computer, and then we're gonna plug in the USB-C side of that cord to the radio, and you're gonna see a
To the top of the radio. The bottom of the radio only charges the battery.
correct. The bottom USB connector, USB-C you see down here is just for charging. So you're gonna plug it into that, and then on your computer, you're gonna see that it's asking you if you want the accessory to connect, and you say allow, and then you go radio model and you find TX right there, TX16S, right? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna flash via USB. And then we need to add a device right here, and we're gonna add the STM32 bootloader, connect. It loads here. We go to next, and then literally we just start flashing. And first it's gonna download the file, and as you can see here is erasing the existing firmware from the radio, and then it's gonna proceed to flash the radio. This is the easiest way to do the flash on the Edge TX software. There are other ways. If you don't have a Mac computer, you might need to download the drivers in order to connect the bootloader. There are videos. If you watch this video on YouTube, I'll post a link to videos where there are tutorials on how to install that on your Windows computer. There's other ways too. You can download the bin file and then you can move it to your SD card on the radio and power up the radio, and the radio will automatically detect that file and go into the firmware update. So, anyways, not taking too long. Let's see. We're at 100%. Radio has been flashed with Edge TX. That's all you got to do. Unplug the radio, and we're gonna power it back up, and hopefully it'll boot up. Yep. Now it's giving me a throttle warning because the throttle's not all the way down. And now if we go to sys and we go to the I at the end, now we're running version 2.10.5 Centurion. So that's all it takes. Easy, huh, Alex? Not a big deal.
Yeah, actually, that was easy.
Let me talk a little bit about the options here. So on the sys screen, I'm not going to go into every single detail, but if you go to sys, you're going to see that the first screen you go to, you have all your tools. They're also known as LUAs. One of them is Express LRS. Basically, Express LRS is a script that has been loaded into the radio. You have all these various scripts on the radio that control many different things, right? Um, the second one is your SD card. So it looks like an SD card up on the graphic. That one right there is basically where you can navigate through everything that's inside the SD card on your radio, and you can make changes, and it's basically like a file browser. The next one is your main settings screen right here. That's where you set the date and time. As you can see, this radio is brand new. It's set to the year 2000. It go through all these options and get everything set up right there. One thing that's kind of cool right here is the splash screen and the power off delay. So when you boot up, you get a splash screen. Alex is an expert at making splash screens anymore.
I've enjoyed doing
So
that, yeah.
just hit him up. I'm just kidding. We'll get into splash screens later. But that defines how long it takes for the splash screen to remain active when you first power up. One really cool feature is the power off delay. If you turn that to like 0 seconds and you push the power button, it'll turn off immediately, which is a feature that I actually like. There's Alex's screen, splash screen. Other interesting options here, well, obviously your location, the units, there's all kinds of stuff here. And of course, the mode two, meaning on the left is rudder and throttle, so that's mode two. And then we have, next screen right there would be your themes. We're gonna get into themes at some other point, some other video or whatever, but this is where you can change the theme of the radio. The next screen over has global functions. Again, not worth getting into right now, but it's a cool feature. It's actually pretty cool to have that as well. And then you have the trainer option, which we're not going to get into, of course. And then after that, you have the hardware, and then you can set your battery meter range. And all that does is that changes this meter right here on the main screen. Since I'm using a LiPo, I think I'm good with where I'm at right there. which is 6.4 to 8.4. Then the battery calibration, that's for real nerds that want to make sure the battery is being read the exact decimal of a volt that the battery true condition is. And then you got all these other kinds of options. Nothing really that you have to do over here if you don't want to. One thing that's important to do, and we're going to talk about this very quickly, is calibration. So when you first get your radio, it is important that you calibrate the functions, the sticks, and all the pots and everything. So you got two sliders here on the side, one on the left and one on the right. And then you got these knobs up here, S1 and S2. You want all those to be centered, and you want your throttle stick or collective stick, as we call it, to be centered. And then once you're there in calibration, you click, you select calibration, and it'll tell you to center and to hit enter when you're ready and to start. And then you hit enter. And then all you have to do is move the sticks left to right, up and down. Don't try to like force them. You don't want to like put too much pressure on them. You just want to make sure you reach the end of travel on both sticks. And then once you're done with that, you're going to move your sliders on the right side and on the left side. And then you're going to move the S1 and S2 knobs all the way from the left to the right and then back to center. And then when you're done, you hit enter. And then it says calibration completed and you're done. So that's kind of it. A very super brief overview of the system menu. And then, of course, the model menu is where you access your model. So here's one important trick about the model menu. You have to make reference to this all the time. If you push the model menu twice, it takes you to the channel monitor. And this is super important that you get used to using this channel monitor, because this will show you the movement on all your channels, aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder. And the upper line is the output line and the lower line is the input line. Okay, so we as heli pilots are spoiled because of Spectrum and Mikado and all these,
Especially Mikado.
yeah, all these systems that are fascinatingly easy to use. But this is a more traditional radio with a million different features. And one feature that we as helicopter pilots don't use is outputs. So let me put it into perspective. You have inputs, which is whatever you're feeding into the radio. Then you have a mix, or the mixes, right, which defines what's happening and what channel is being utilized. And then you have an output, which is how you combine that mix, that input and that mix into the true output of the radio. We don't really need to use outputs at all. So we're just going to focus on inputs and mixes. That's all we're going to do. All right, guys, before we get into creating the model, let's talk a little bit about binding your device. So I have a Radiomaster Nexus unit. This is 100% my favorite unit for a lot of reasons that I'm not going to talk about right now, but basically it's simple, it's small, it's easy to use. If you have Hobbywing and you want to use the Hobbywing telemetry cable, plugs directly right on top. You could do that on other units like FlyDragon, but if you already had a V-bar, for example, and you had that telemetry cable, you could just plug it into here, into this DSM port. It's a really nice CNC aluminum case. It's just a beautiful unit. The only drawback about this unit is you need a receiver. So you get this receiver, which is and I just opened this up, it's the RP3-H, also, of course, from Radiomaster. And what you do is you plug the receiver right into the Nexus with the supplied cable. Now, there's many different ways to bind, and in an attempt to keep this video as short as possible, even though it's not short anymore, we're going to show you the easiest way to bind this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to power on, we're going to plug the receiver to the Nexus on the A port right here. And so the goal here is we're going to power the whole system by feeding 2SO LiPo power into, say, for example, the ESC port here. And then the goal here to put this receiver in bind mode is to plug and unplug this very quickly, like 3 times. You have to do it 3 times within, I think, a couple of seconds. And then you'll see how it'll start blinking, and then I'll bring the radio and show you how it gets bound. So I'm going to put power in here first. I'm going to plug it into the ESC port. So now it's powered up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to like do this 3 times very quickly. And as you can see now, it's blinking twice very quickly. Then we go to the radio. And now we go to the system screen, SYS screen, and we go to Express LRS, and it's loading, and then we're going to find the bind button at the very bottom. Now you can see here it says telemetry and then switch mode and all these kinds of things, and the packet rate and everything else. You can change all kinds of options. Like the lowest I would recommend is 333. That's the lowest I would recommend. Don't you agree with that, Alex?
Yeah, that's what I've been using. I know I've been using 1,000, I believe.
You can go to 1,000. You can go all kinds. I think the safe one to start out with is 333, especially if you're new to this. And then you hit the bind button. And then it's binding. Boom, done. It's bound. And how do you know it's bound to the receiver? Is because the receiver is not blinking anymore. The receiver is now solid red.
You can also see on the radio that your 3 bars are lit up now.
Correct. So now to exit the screen, you push this button under sys and you have to hold it to exit. Push again to go to the main screen, and you can see those bars right there that look like cell phone bars kind of thing, and that shows you that you're bound to the receiver. And you can see if I disconnect this receiver right now or unplug the battery, you're going to see how the radio will immediately, you see how the bars go out, and it says telemetry lost. So I'm going to go ahead and ignore this battery for now, and we're going to go to create the model. But before we do, we're going to go ahead and plug in the Nexus, okay, to the computer with the supplied USB-C cable, like so. And then I'm going to fire up Rotor Flight here in the computer. So as you can see on the screen, with Rotor Flight configurator, which you can download from rotorflight.org, the minute that I plug in the Nexus or say a Fly Dragon into there, you will be able to see the stick movements on the screen, on your Rotor Flight configurator, telling you that the Rotor Flight device, the Nexus in this case, or the Fly Dragon, is receiving a signal from the receiver, whether it is its internal receiver like the Fly Dragon or the external RP3-H receiver like the Nexus. And as you move the flabberless unit, you can see the helicopter move around. So anyway, that means you have a solid connection. We're going to talk about Rotor Flight later. This is not a topic for today's video. The whole goal of today's video is to teach you how to create this model on your radio. So, are you with me, Alex? Let's create this model.
I'm with you. Let's do it. I'm following along.
All right.